Hello, 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 everybody. You're listening to the Earful Tower podcast. My name is Oliver G. I think you knew that already. Today, we've got a good, fun episode with Cara Black, the author, the New York Times best-selling author. I'm sure you've heard of her before. She's a friend of the show. She's been on this podcast in the past. And this week, we're talking about her brand new book, which is called 3 Hours in Paris. If you're expecting an Amy LeDuc book, forget it. This is a whole new style for her. I was just going to say what it's about, but that's what the whole conversation is. It's about the new book. We're talking about the challenges of researching the Second World War and how to set sort of historical fiction in Paris at the time. All that kind of stuff. We recorded it via Zoom from her place in San Francisco. But yeah, that's all you need to know. I think remember to hang around at the end if you want to hear some fun reviews and emails that have come in. And on a personal note, thank you very much to all the Patreon supporters of this show, because without you, this wouldn't exist. That's a guarantee. I would have stopped, 2.5 years ago. So patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower, loads of bonus content, including the scroll for this episode, all the things that Cara mentions, pictures of Hitler and so on. It's all there. You can find it on Patreon. So 3 Hours in Paris, Cara Black. Let's get into it. Here comes the jingle. Here we go. Cara Black, hello.
Hello, Oliver. How are you?
I'm really well. It's lovely to see you again.
Yeah, I know. I wish we were together in Paris doing this in your little recording studio. But
Yeah, that feels like, do you remember that? That was like, what was it, like 2 years ago, the first time we met up in that studio? I remember.
Yeah, we had to crawl up all those steps all the way up to your, Chambre à Bonne, which is a recording studio. It was lovely.
And it feels like every time we've met since then that we've taken things a step further, as in we went riding on the scooter, retracing Amy's life or, her trip to work. And then we're on that rooftop terrace in Montmartre or something.
Yes.
We've been all over.
Yeah.
And now here we are. You're sitting in San Francisco. I can see people moving in the windows behind you, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do you see the fog rolling in?
No, is that what it is, though? It looks a little bit dim in the back. Is it like mountains?
We have mountains, we have hills, we have fog that will be hopefully burned off soon.
Right, okay. Yeah. It's very different to the studio in Paris then, isn't it? So it is.
I'm at my kitchen table.
Yeah, and you've got a big pile of books behind you too.
I do. And just, it's kind of funny. There's all my favorites, and there's one called Paris on Air by Oliver G. So, I don't know.
You're too kind to me, Cara. You're too kind. But we're not here to talk about that book. We're here to talk about not just your latest book, but the kind of concepts behind writing it. And do you fancy jumping right into it now?
Sure, yeah. My new book, it's really different from what I've been doing, because this book is set in 1940. And so that was a huge, how do you get to 1940? How do you make it real? How do you make it plausible? How do you paint a picture? And so, yeah, but I love that kind of thing, and having gone to Paris many times, and you and I, we've walked around. Remember when we walked around the Marais? I mean, you'll be on a 17th century street, but there'll be bullet holes left from when, during the gunfights during liberation, between the French and Germans. So, there's all these layers of history. So when I, became obsessed to write this book set in the first 2 weeks of the German occupation in Paris, it's a very specific time. And Oliver, if anyone's writing historical fiction, think about what kind of materials and resources you would have available or you could hunt down and find out. And this was a time very little documented because people had fled Paris, right, in the big exodus. So in a way, it was hard to find documentation. And in a way, it was great because I could, I didn't have to be a slave to what was happening because it was not documented.
Sure.
I did find a lot of papers and documentation. Things that in the book that I fictionalized are based on historical occurrences. The submarine attack up in the Orkney Islands, which really happened.
Sure.
And all these things. So, and the story is from what people don't really know about, they know about SOE, Special Operations Executive, right? Churchill's clandestine group to set Europe ablaze after war was declared. Clandestine agents. But it was going on before that. And it was called Section D. And it was very hush-hush. People didn't know about it because before the war was declared, before Dunkirk, or Dunkirk, and until the Germans finally invaded, it was seen that the British were very gentlemanly, right? And they didn't want agents to attack the foreign powers, and so, but Churchill wanted an ungentlemanly warfare, so he got these Section D people and gave them free rein. They were out of the box thinkers. They were not from the elite British schools, but they had a skill. People in the movie industry, the filmmaking industry, and used them to do these clandestine acts. And all the paper, and that later became Section SOE. But if you're going to do research and you have to go to Kew Gardens outside London, to the archives, or in Washington, or I went to the Chateau de Vincennes in Paris to look for all these things. What you have to remember is that only 15% of the papers of that time remain.
Wow.
Okay?
Wow. Was it this sort of secrecy and the lack of full documentation? Was there something in there that made you go, I'm setting my next book in the first 2 weeks of occupied Paris? What was the turning? What made you go, I'm done with Amy for a while. Let's do something set here. How did that happen?
Yeah, I found a footnote, a footnote in a book that said, one book I was reading, that Hitler, with his entourage, came to Paris in June 1940, right after he signed the armistice, for 3 hours. Only 3 hours. He left abruptly, never returned to Paris. And I'm like, well, why? Why wouldn't he come back? Why didn't he have a big parade down the Champs-Élysées? I mean, this was his city. I mean, he was a Francophile. He loved the Paris Opera, and why? What was so odd about that? And I know we're recording, but I have a photo of Hitler in Paris on this 3-hour trip with Albert Speer, his architect, and Arno Breker, his sculptor. And the two of them with Hitler in that pose, with the Eiffel Tower behind him. Mm. After the war, so these men were with him. After the war, both men survived and they wrote their memoirs and recountings. And Albert Speer said this visit was a Sunday morning, at 5 or 6 a.m. for 3 hours in June 28th. Arno Breker wrote his account, and he said basically the same thing, only it was June 23rd, a week earlier on a Sunday. And that was never disputed. Why were these two men who were with Hitler give two different dates? And that was never reconciled. It made sense for Hitler to come to Paris right after signing the armistice, northern France there, and come right down to Paris for this quick trip. Why did he leave? And that what if obsessed me. What if, someone wanted to take a shot at him? What if a sniper took him out? I mean, there were so many attempts on Hitler's life, right? And when you look back at it, it's amazing how this man had more lives than 2 cats or 3 cats together. But, it made sense. I mean, who knew how the French would receive him? I mean, there was, they could have welcomed him. They could have ignored him. I mean, no one knew. Someone could have taken a shot at him. And I was like, well, I think we need a sniper. And I think we need a female sniper. And I think she needs to be American.
Yeah.
I wanted to write an American woman, not fashionista like Amy. I wanted her to be a big bone gal, grow up in the backwoods in Oregon, who could shoot. I mean, grew up shooting because she was she lived on a ranch during the Depression, hard times, and grew up shooting game for food. I mean, they ate it or they protected, from wolves. I mean, there were wolves up in Oregon then. And so this gal, put her in trouble, throw her there, and see what she would do.
I love it. I don't know how your mind works that you see the footnote in a book like that, and then you start that it goes that far. But I like it. I like your mind, and I like your books. But also, when you were talking about that picture, do you have it framed next to you or something? Because you can show me.
Oh, I've got it here. But I also have all these great photos from the flea market. You know, I always go to the Brocon.
Sure.
And I go and I find all these photos. Here's some of people eating black market food in a fancy restaurant. I don't know if you guys look at the Champs-Élysées.
Wow. Hold that really
1930.
close to the camera, and I can describe. So we got an empty Champs-Élysées there. Is it a German officer?
It's French. See, French policeman.
Oh, there you go, French policeman. Okay, I see it. Okay, and where's the one with Hitler?
Oh, hold on. Let me go get it. I'm going to go off screen for a minute.
No worries. So that's so the footnote, and then the picture of Hitler there with his two cronies prompted 3 hours in Paris.
Right. I wanted to read about that. You know, what did they say about this? And then they had these different dates, and I was like, am I the only person seeing this?
So do you suspect some kind of foul play with these different dates, or?
Definitely. See that? That's the Madeleine. Do you see the
Hold
French
it back
soldier?
a little bit. Back a little bit. A little bit more. A little bit more. There you go. Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
I have lots of these incredible photos. Do I think what? Sorry, say that again.
I think I said, do you suspect foul play?
Oh yeah, I do. Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? What
Because
sort of foul play?
well, I figured there was some attempt on his life. I mean, why was there this discrepancy? I mean, it just didn't make sense. And so I think some event happened. I think Hitler was skittish when he came to Paris, but he loved French paintings, right? He stole so many of them, and so did Goering. I think he was skittish. I think he was ruled by his astrologer as well, we know. So I was thinking, what is he doing? You know, what's going on? What would make someone like him, who was, really, wanted to aspire to great art, a failed painter, what would make him never return? Well, the angry natives, the restless natives. So he would come to Paris and he would, see these things. And you can see on YouTube his tour, you can see them. But I think something happened, and Goebbels, the minister of propaganda, the man who invented faux news, just cut some of that and just wound that newsreel to where he wanted it. I mean, wouldn't it show if there was an attempt on Hitler's life? If there wasn't wouldn't it show that the Germans couldn't take care of Europe? It would show that there were people against them. There were,
So do you think that because the two officers had differing accounts on the date, it could be that he came twice?
I know. I think they were told at the time, we don't speak about this. It's gone on the cutting room floor. We never speak about this.
Interesting.
After the war, they're all dead, right? I mean, there's no reason to not come clean about it. I think that's what I thought. I talked a lot with my editor. Wouldn't they have come clean and said, there was an attempt on Hitler's life? But you have to look at these men, and I think it happened on June 23rd. I think it happened when Hitler came to Paris, the one time.
Tell me, how does it feel to spend, how long does it take to write the book?
This book took 10 years.
10 years. Okay, so how does it feel to be spending 10 years researching people like Hitler and being deep into that world? Like, does it affect your daily life? Are you sort of like does it mean, I can imagine when you're gathering information about something or someone like Hitler or anyone, that if it comes on the news, you kind of almost get happy. You're like, Hitler, great, yes. That's kind of a weird thing to happen to you, no?
Right, but it's kind of like detecting, it's being a detective, which I do for the AMA books. I'm always looking at different kinds of crime, different ways people relate, how this would happen. So it was the same way I looked at with Hitler, because again, there wasn't a lot of documentation. But I did find these photos. I found books. I found this old book. It was written by, and it's about the Paris Underground. It was published in 1943. Mm-hmm. And this was an American woman in her 60s who was living in Paris and got involved with hiding RAF flyers who were downed. So it's amazing. And this book, my friend found it in a, like a flea market. So it was interesting to hear the real account. And of course, it's fictionalized. But I mean, books of that period, like what it was like. But again, when I've been writing the Amy books, I always have some history in there, things about World War II. I mean, Murder in the Marais, of course, stemmed from a story set in World War II. But because the Amy books are set in the 90s, when a lot of people were opening up about World War II and about the past, the stain of collaboration, not a happy time. That I have to I feel if I write about the 90s and I don't reflect what was going on, then that's not true. So there's always someone in the book who, has dealt with something in World War II where there'll be a passing comment. So I've always been accumulating these little historical bits, writing them down, keeping them in separate notebooks, things about World War II. Sometimes they fit in Amy's story, sometimes they didn't. So again, I always started working on this story 10 years ago, putting these things, not really being very clear, but knowing something was going to happen, knowing there had to be some trajectory. And then when I found that footnote, I was like, yes, I had all this body of great historical tidbits, and now I had it. And I talked to my editor, and she said, you need to write that.
I remember it like yesterday reading Murder in the Marais. There was a Nazi in it. And there was a neo-Nazi in it, I think, too, or several. So it wasn't a huge leap. It wasn't a wild leap to do a book that's World War II-y for you, right? I mean, it's not like, writing all of a sudden about the Amazon jungle or something like that.
Right, yeah.
Do you feel comfortable in World War II?
I do. I think there's, and so many things. I feel comfortable, and I also feel... I sort of felt, I don't want to say it's a mission, because that sounds kind of hokey, but the women were not being portrayed as being active in World War II. And of course they were, but not in, they're not on the battlefield shooting, so it was very different. But women, who was home, who was in the country? The men were either POWs, forced labor in Germany, and so women had to do the work everywhere in the world, and they had to, also take care of the families, but they weren't just one-dimensional. They were also doing these other acts of heroism that people never talked about. And women, who else was there, to carry the arms or, deliver a message? Even though you had a baby stroller and you had eggs in your shopping basket, you would be dropping off, clandestine paper to the underground or something, because you were there and you did what was needed. And World War II, I mean, the stakes were so high, and this was wartime. People were not, when you talk about heroism, they're also like, well, I mean, it's what you did because we were occupied, right? We don't have that mindset here in the present day, but I think people doing extraordinary things during extraordinary times, and they find these reserves of courage, or, maybe they don't think about it too, they just go and say, this needs to be done, and I'll do it.
With writing these kind of books, I imagine it's hard not to put a bit of yourself into the characters. I've never tried to write fiction before, but I imagine. Do you find yourself like a bit of a sort of detective person, a little bit of a secretive, a little bit of a sniper kind of person in there somewhere, Cara?
I think I should be a sniper. I know so much about it now. I'm like, yeah, I could do it. I mean, I've described it. I went to a shooting range. Yeah, I could be a sniper, how would I act? How would I feel? Sure,
Have you got a good steady hand and a good eye?
I've got a good eye, got to work on this. I think I'd be shaking if I held a gun and was trying to shoot someone out my window. But, be very patient. They actually said women make really good snipers because they're much more patient and they can multitask, and they're just waiting for that moment in that window,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I could be a sniper. I think I could be a detective too.
Yeah, I think if anyone I know could be a good detective, it would have to be you, because you've put so much thought into detecting. I mean, do your friends turn to you to help out with, mysteries? San Francisco Mysteries.
Well, you know our good friend Adrienne Leeds, right?
Yeah.
She once came to me. She said, I have to find this person. Can you? And I said, no, I want you to talk to Martine, a Duluth detective, right? The real Duluth detective on Rue Duluth, because that's Martine's business. You know, I mean, you don't want me, right?
Yeah.
Just do it on the page. So I referred her to Martine.
I've got another question for you, Cara, is that this book, it's sort of, it feels like it's more of a page turner, a quicker page turner. And I'm hugely interested in how, like, I don't plan to do it, but I'm sure there are other people who are interested in how it works. How do you write a page turner? What's the secret? How do you make someone sit there turning the page wanting to know what happens next? Is there a formula to it?
Well, formula, I don't know if there's if there is, I don't know what it is. But what I did was that I've got 3 points of view. I've got Kate, the sniper, the American. We've got Gunther, the German, who's hunting her down, who's got 36 hours to find the sniper. They don't know it's a woman. Then we've got Stepney in the UK, in London, who is Kate's handler. And so we see it through his eyes, the government, his Section D's eyes. So when I realized those were my protagonists, my 3 points of view, then I was like, okay. And then it was when the Fuhrer gave Gunther, the deadline of 36 hours. You've got to, and otherwise, his job was on the line, his family were in danger. So then that really gave me a great, what do I want to say, framework. We would count down the clock, and that's important. Kate had to escape. Stepney had to get his mission accomplished. The German had to find the sniper and satisfy the Fuhrer. And then you have all the obstacles they face. Stepney has people who are against him in the military. Gunther has a rival Nazi who wants to gain political prestige with the Fuhrer. Kate's got Nazis chasing her. So everyone has their own agenda. Plus, they've got all these issues within their own world that are pulling at them. And then they're all on this 36 hours. So I found I've been working on this book a long time, and I would do a draft. And then I went back thinking, okay. And I spoke a lot with my editor, and she was like, yeah, we talked about it. And it was very much that on the cover of the book, you see the clock, like in the Musée d'Orsay, that big clock in the window. And it was like, here's the framework. Here's the template. We're working down every hour. So I would say if you can, so to write a thriller, you're switching between constant points of view, each character, and you're also putting the time frame. Okay, it's now 3 p.m. And I would make a timeline, and I would say, what is Kate doing at 3 p.m.? What escape route is she taking? Is it through Place Madeleine or wherever? What is Gunther doing, trying to find out whatever he's finding out to trace her? And what is Stepney doing? What kind of meeting is he having? He also meets with Churchill. What is he, what is he doing? So that really helped have a framework of it, like a ticking, you want to say ticking bomb, but yeah, you have a deadline. Having a deadline is good. Breaking it down into different points of view is also good.
How does it feel that, you said the book took 10 years to write. I'm sure that some people bought it and read it in almost one sitting, perhaps. Does that annoy you?
No, because I hope so. That's what I want. I want to keep you up at night. And Oliver, you better tell me that you were up all night reading it when you do. That's my job. That's the kind of book I love. But you're going to think about it, hopefully. Hopefully it will go, wait, I got to go back and look at that. Yeah. And then you might read it again with a different, I think it's like an injection of sugar. But that's okay. But there's a lot in this story. And I think you realize, wait, let me think about it. Let me look at that. Or, how did that? Oh, yeah. Many people have told me they've gone back and reread it and enjoyed it again with a more, leisure pace.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start reading it in the early afternoon or something so that I can get it through in one sitting. Because if I have to stay up till 6 in the morning, I won't be able to handle it. I've got time's running away from us, but I got a question out of left field for you to end on. You spend a lot of time researching Paris from yesteryear. And obviously when it's occupied, it's a very different place, and probably the last place anyone would want to be. But are there parts of Paris from 60, 70, 80 years ago that you think sound better than they are today?
Yes.
Like
yes, what? The corset shop is still there. It's Claverie. It's up on, I passed it on the bus. It's up in the 10th arrondissement. I passed it on the bus. It's like this Art Nouveau, Art Deco storefront. I'm like, oh my God. It had the corset name, and they were still selling corsets. So this must have been quite a while ago. And I'm like, so one time this goes in the book. I don't know where, how, when, but this goes in the book. And sometime later I went back, and now it's still there at the storefront, but they don't sell corsets. It's like perfume or something. You've got to go there, really. You've got to take a walk up there. It's so amazing. So I used that in the story. And there was a whole history. I'm a member of the Historic Society of the 10th arrondissement, and my friend was telling me he went there on a visit inside, and maybe 10 years ago, met the owners. That it was a family that had owned it for generations, and how the man after World War I would make wooden legs for people coming back from World War I, and and then they would do the corsets and all the famous people they designed corsets for, and this incredible history. And he said when he went there 10 years ago, he went up in the attic and there were still wooden legs there.
Wow.
Yeah, probably not there now, but that kind of place, it was like time forgot this place. And I loved that. So it was very easy for me to write scenes and set scenes in that building. Also, the Jardin de Luxembourg is timeless, right? You walk through there. You sit on a bench, not right in front of the Medici fountain, up from Penelope's bookstore, the Red Wheelbarrow, and Treize Bakery. You walk up there just by the Senate, which was taken over by the Germans. You walk and you sit on one of those benches. You close your eyes, depending if it's winter or fall or summer, and you're hearing the leaves rustle, you're hearing the gravel, people walking on the gravel path, you're feeling the sun or you're feeling the rain. And I thought, I've sat there in all those seasons. I've heard those noises. The children are pushing those little boats with the sticks in the water. And then I'm like, this is Gunter. Gunter would be sitting here in 1940, in this time, in June. He would be feeling the sun. He would be sitting on this bench, and it hasn't changed. Mm. So that kind of thing you can draw on, if you're writing a story or if you're going somewhere and you're walking the ground, you're feeling the footsteps of people from the past. And that, right, those things haven't changed,
Mm.
So that's, if you're writing a historical book, if you can go there, even if it's set in 1870s Istanbul, go to Istanbul if you can and find those little pockets or, go to an old church or, whatever, up the Bosporus and feel what it's like. I think of course, when you can travel, that's what you want, you want to evoke that time.
Mm. It feels like it's pretty particularly easy in Paris to feel like you're in yesteryear if you know where to look, I think.
Yeah.
Because so much has happened there. But yes, anyway, I'm looking forward to reading the book, Cara, and thank you for being on the Eiffel Tower. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in Paris next time you make it over.
I know. I hope that will be soon. I really do.
Yeah, we'll have some kind of event or something when you're over here. Okay.
Yeah, let's go up to the corset shop.
Let's do it. I was thinking when you said that near my place in Montmartre, they redid that whole street to make it look like 1942, and they had a corset shop up there. It was for a film. It was so cool. So cool.
I was watching all your posts. That's amazing. Yeah.
Oh, that was a magical. And then it got frozen during the lockdown because they didn't have time to take it down before that mega lockdown happened. So for 2 months, when I was going for my hour-long exercise every other day, I'd go on that street sometimes and it was empty. So there was no indication that it wasn't 1942 or 3 or whatever it was. Kind of eerie, Cara. But
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. I'm looking forward to reading the book. And thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you, Oliver, and all the best to you and Lena.
Thank you very much. Well, there you have it. Cara Black, friend of the show, friend of mine, lovely woman, and always nice to chat to her. Looking forward to seeing her when she gets back to Paris again. Don't forget to check out her book, 3 Hours in Paris. It is the October selection for the book club. If you don't know what I'm talking about with the book club, it's just a group on Facebook with something like 1,300 people. And every month I pick a book and we discuss it. So for this one, I haven't started reading it yet, but I will along with everybody else as October rolls around. So there you have it. Cara Black. Check out the scroll that goes with this episode. Eddie has put together a really fascinating one as usual. Beautiful. Lots of extras, including some of those members-only walks that I did with Cara over the past couple years. Patreon.com/The Eiffel Tower. Now I think it's time that we check out what's new in the reviews section. I dive in here every now and again. The first one that comes up is, oh my goodness, it's the 500th rating I just noticed. Literally, as I'm sitting here, the 500th rating of the podcast, and it is from Joe DePremio, fan in Cape May. That's his name on Apple Podcast. He says, it's a good review, thank goodness. It says, fun podcast with so many interesting guests. You got that one right, Joe. He writes, excellent podcast. I've been enjoying the Eiffel Tower with Oliver G since the beginning of 2020, and I've enjoyed his great knowledge of Paris and his Australian wit. He makes the extra effort to provide good content and fun activities such as pub quizzes, walking tours, interviews with notables. I like that, notables, such as the mayors of the 18th and 4th arrondissements, and the man himself, Ernest Hemingway. It's true. Even though I've been to Paris 20 plus times, I continue to enjoy Oliver's take on one of the world's best cities. From Joe. Thanks so much for that lovely review, Joe. That was really kind of you to send in. And what a lovely thing to know that after 20 visits to the City of Lights, or the City of Light, depending on how everyone out there feels about it. Gosh, don't send me an email about it, guys. So many times. It's so lovely to know that you enjoy the podcast, Joe. Thank you. Let's have a look. What else have we got in here? One from Chriskiopoulos. And I feel like it's a she. Chris? Oh, maybe it's Chris Kiopoulos. Could be a he. Chris says, what is it about this podcast? Oliver's a natural storyteller, but there's something else. His warm, friendly personality comes right into your headphones, and you feel like you're there as he chats to his guests. Equals friends. That's a nice thought. We're all friends here. There's always real content, so you learn stuff, yet as professional and researched as he is, it never gets heavy or boring. Because there's always a bit of silliness not far away. But not stupid silly, but smart, quick, witty, entertaining silly. It's a nice thing to say. Sure, it's about Paris and France, but it's also about being a foreigner and being open to new cultures. And don't we all need a bit of that? That's true. Final comment. I've just bought his book, Paris on Air. Next day, hand-delivered to my front door. Thank you, Sally. Which I'm really enjoying. It's all about the storytelling, ... I appreciate that, Chris. And if you got the book from Sally next day, I assume either you're in Melbourne, Australia, where I happen to know there are 9 copies left of the book, or Sally is doing next day deliveries to all of Australia now, which I'm going to have to confirm because that sounds pretty amazing. But if you are in Australia, check it out, theeiffeltower.com/memoir, but make sure you get Cara's book first or at the same time. Anyway, by the time this podcast reaches your ears, Monday, September 28th, I'm back in Paris after a little while in Sweden, and I can't wait to get going, so make sure you check out all the social media channels because I plan to hit the ground running. So see you on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all that stuff. I can't wait. Walk shows to come, Patreon only stuff to come. I'm ready to share Paris. Let's get into it. See you soon. Au revoir.